Hey, welcome back to another round 1 game of PP Florence. And we have Purplemurasaki versus Zangy. Zangy's on ninjas with some new cards from the new sets, and Purplemusaki's on CandleOx. Purplemurasaki mulligans and still gets a pretty bad hand because their first land comes to play tapped and they don't have a second land, so I think they're going to mulligan this again. Zangy, meanwhile, gets a hand with 2 ninjas and a way to fetch Monument of the Fallen Man, so that's a pretty good keep. Purplemurasaki has to go down to 4 cards because they got hand with no land. But on the bright side, at least this isn't a horrible 4-card hand, right? Because, I mean, they have Founding Hero, and then they have all these 1-drops and 2 lands. And since Zangy has no plays on 1, Purplemurasaki can easily drop a 1-drop, and then the next turn they can put out 2 more things. So yeah, the game's starting. Zangy starts off with a land. Purplemurasaki draws, and it's Corlett Champion, which isn't a bad 2-drop. So yeah, Purplemurasaki starts with the Founding Hero. Then he fetches, and they get Theocracy off the top. Can't cast it though with the current mana. But they're going to play Corlett Paladin, using it to fetch a Monument to Fallen Man. And Purplemurasaki, I guess they can play out Corlett Champion. I mean, that's the best use of their mana, because otherwise they just leave 1 mana standing. And that does allow them to swing in with Founding Hero as a 3/2 first striker. I don't think Zangy actually has a good way to deal with the Founding Hero right now, at least with the current hand. They have Monument, and then I guess they can Monument in the Giant Pickpocket to discard the Idyllic Odyssey, or I guess a land. Downhill Forgemaster, that's a really good top deck, because that means Purplemurasaki can fetch other Chevalier's lands, and then enable Founding Hero's Civilized to start swinging as a double striker. And then you can keep playing chump blockers, but Founding Hero is going to demand a chump every turn. You have Downhill Forgemaster, using the adventure to get Chevalier's lands. Then you're thinking about whether they want to Monument in something in response. They just let it resolve. Yeah, they're probably thinking about using Giant Pickpocket to pick off Purplemusaki's last card in hand. And there's Chevalier's lands. Then he lets it resolve. Okay, and now Zangy doesn't have an opportunity to Monument in Giant Pickpocket before Purplemurasaki plays the Idyllic Odyssey. Those Purplemurasaki, yeah, they're going to dump their hand right now before Zangy has a chance to Giant Pickpocket their last card in hand. And Zangy just lets it resolve. Yeah, Purplemurasaki skillfully sequence their plays so that they don't lose their last card to Giant Pickpocket. And then Idyllic Odyssey strides them into their next draw, but they're probably just going to get draw step discarded by Giant Pickpocket. So they're going to have to make do with what's on board, but what is on board is pretty good. And they even have the Downhill on the Adventure, so they have something to play next turn, even if they get discarded on their draw step. Purplemusaki's thinking about whether Purplemurasaki swings in with the Founding Hero that has double strike. Chevalier's lance snaps onto the Corlett Champion, giving it first strike 2. And now Zangy has to think about, well, they definitely want to Monument in something, and they probably want to chump block too. So, I mean, they're definitely chumping the Founding Hero, otherwise they're taking a ton of damage. They can Monument in the Shinrei, or I guess the Suzume, and then, yeah, chump and then use Suzume to bounce. Then Zangy can just keep chumping turn after turn this way. And Purplemurasaki doesn't really have a good way to deal with it, except by going wide. So Zangy taps, gets Iron Warden, which is really good because that will answer Purplemusaki's creatures. And yeah, Zangy going to drop down Iron Warden right away. And Shinrei will be a good way to sacrifice the Iron Warden in order to get the counters onto something else. And they're just going to pass, holding up Monument in the Shinrei to sack Iron Warden and kill something. Well, Zangy is going to use Monument for Giant Pickpocket on draw step instead. But that means, well, actually, the Iron Warden can just block one of the guys and then spread the counters that way. I think Purplemurasaki plays Downhill Forgemaster, which buffs his Founding Hero to a 5/4, and then they can swing in with everything. And now Iron Warden can't really kill Founding Hero. Alternatively, Purplemurasaki can just equip their lance onto a Jellyfish and start swinging that way, because the Jellyfish, if they attack alone, is unblockable due to Slipstream. So yeah, Purplemurasaki deciding between whether they want to spend their mana playing Downhill Forgemaster from the Adventure or re-equipping Chevalier's lance onto the Jellyfish. Well, I mean, at the same time, Purplemurasaki doesn't know that Zangy has Shinrei in hand. So they don't know that Zangy has a way to sack Iron Warden. They might think that the only way Iron Warden dies is if it chumps. But it seems like Purplemurasaki is just going to swing out. They're going to accept Iron Warden killing one of their creatures, most likely the Founding Hero. Yeah, so they pumps the Founding Hero with the Iron Warden, and then uses it to kill Corlett Champion. I would have killed Founding Hero instead, because that thing's threatening way more damage. Well, now Purplemurasaki just gets to re-equip the Chevalier's lance onto Jellyfish. Or no, they're going to play Downhill instead. Okay, but with Chevalier's lance plus the Idyllic Odyssey, Purplemurasaki has things to do with their mana even if they get draw stat blocked by Giant Pickpocket. Then he plays their Coastal Domain tap. They can Theocracy next turn, I guess. Zangy can correlate Paladin for another monument. Maybe a second monument is fine because they have Suzume plus Giant Pickpocket. Zangy's going to play correlate Paladin. Are they going to search? Seems like they are. Okay, so I guess they draw monument next turn, and then they actually no, they can't play Theocracy plus monument next turn. I guess they're probably saving monument for a turn after Theocracy. Zangy's going to swing in with a Giant Pickpocket. I mean, I guess no point not doing that because you're going to bounce it with Suzume anyways. And Purplesaki's thinking, what do they have to think about? You just block it here and then Suzume bounces it immediately. Is there any combat tricks that Zangy can pull that would punish Purplesaky for blocking here? Because I don't think there is, right? Oh, I guess Underpass Sentinel? You just let it through in order to play around Underpass Sentinel. Because you're just taking 1 damage. You don't really care about the single life, especially since you have Identical Odyssey, getting it back in next turn. No, Purplesaky is going to block anyways, accepting the possibility of Underpass Sentinel, I guess, and yeah, they don't get punished for that because they bounced it with Suzume. They didn't have Underpass Sentinel in hand. Anyways, seems like draw step block again with Zane's Monument of the Fallen Man on Giant Pickpocket. This time it discards Lily Retriton. But again, Purplesaky's fine with that because they have Trevallious Lance to move around, which is something that they can spend their mana on. I think here they probably just want to stick this Trevallious Lance onto the Jellyfish and start swinging in with unblockable 1/1s that are equipped with the Lance. And the unblockable Jellyfish is actually a huge threat to Zane's life total because they need to pay life in order to bounce with Suzume. So life is a pretty important resource for Zangy, and Purplesaky attacking that directly in a way that they can't really block is not very good for them. And so I guess here Purplesaky just think about whether they want to attack with their chumpful creatures or if they just want to equip Lance onto Jellyfish and start swinging in the slipstream. Swinging with the big guys and force Zangy to lose stuff to chump. And I mean, Zangy can double chump here, but that's going to cost them 2 life. Purplesaky is still slowly chipping down Zangy's life total, just a lot slower than if these creatures actually connected. Zangy's going to let Correlite Paladin die. Yeah, I guess they figured that life is important, so they might as well start preserving it. And they moved the Chevalier's Lance post-combat onto Jellyfish as a blocker. I mean, it's a 3/2 first strike, so that's actually a pretty good blocker here. Prevents Zangy from attacking in with Suzume, profitably. Anyways, here's Theocracy. Let's see what Zangy flips. And okay, they flip Sworn Cohort, and they just pass without attacking because they don't have any good attacks. And it seems like, yeah, draw step Giant Pickpocket, discarding Cinderblade. Okay, Purplesaky finally attacking in the slipstream with their unblockable Jellyfish, knocking Zangy down to 5 life. And actually, Purplesaky has lethal next turn if Zangy doesn't have a way to deal with the Jellyfish. And they're going to equip the Lance onto the untapped Jellyfish that just got made in order to block. So second Theocracy trigger. Does Zangy find anything that can save them? Transnaturalist would help here because they can Transnaturalist and then Suzume the Transnaturalist and also play Monument. So they get 3 Transnaturalists a turn cycle if they find it, which would deal with all the Jellyfish. Oh, Moorland Illusionist. So Zangy did not find Transnaturalist, which is not good because nothing in Zane's hand really helps them here. They needed someone to deal with the board, and Giant Pickpocket only deals with what's in the hand. So Zane swings in with Sworn Cohort. Purplesaky probably just doesn't block because they don't want Sworn Cohort to die. Actually, Shinrei can sack Sworn Cohort, so what can Zane even fetch off Sworn Cohort here? They have the ninjas, but that doesn't really help. And then Petrus, that doesn't do anything either. The unblockable Jellyfish. Then Voon doesn't help, so yeah, I don't think there is a legend that Zane can fetch off Sworn Cohort that would save them here. Yeah, no blocks. Probably the right decision. And now Zane Monuments in the Shinrei, I guess. Attacking Sworn Cohort. But what does Zane even try to find? Because, okay, yeah, Zane also realizes that they have no elves here. And Purplesaky takes game 1 off them all to 4. So that's actually quite amazing. It just shows how, I guess, powerful their deck is and its ability to do a lot with very little resources. Looking at the sideboard, Zane's definitely looking to bring in Polygawu because that thing stops attacks. Anointed Cursebreaker, that thing kills artifacts enchantments, which is Purplesaky's entire deck. And then probably Journey's End too, to deal with the big creatures. Now on Purplesaky's side, they probably want to bring in more Mercantile Accords because Zane's deck is entirely 2 drops. And then Ring of Souls to get under the ninjas that can chump block so well. And yeah, Anointed Cursebreaker to get rid of the monuments and theocracies. Okay, time for game 2. Zane has a hand with 2 Iron Wardens. I think they're probably alright with keeping this, even though they have absolutely nothing else. Meanwhile, Purplesaky already mulligans their first hand and gets a second hand with Okay, that's an insane opening hand. They have turn 1 Founding Hero, turn 2 swing in with double striker. I guess Zane Sword has to mulligan this just because they have nothing after the Iron Wardens. I mean, I think you're still alright keeping this because the Iron Wardens do buy a lot of time. If you kill Purplemusaki's creature and they don't have any backup creatures, then suddenly they're floundering a bit. Okay, Zane mulls in the end. Oof, a 1-lander. Yeah, that's not good. They mulligan to 5 and get a hand that ends up being worse than their 7-card hand, probably. But I think they have to keep this. They probably bought Moorland Illusionist and a land, maybe, because they need Gawu to stop the giant founding heroes. They bought Mana Voice Tower and Sworn Cohort. They're going to keep Moorland Illusionist, even though they don't really have anything that works with it currently. Then he leads off with Murky Pete, and Purplemurasaki leads off with the absolutely insane. Well, no, they're not going to go all out just now, because if they decide to play out their train line now, then they risk getting blown out by Anointed Cursebreaker on the Mana Rock. I'm assuming they're going to go for a turn 2 to Gawu. If they don't, then Purplemurasaki gets to swing in for a bunch next turn with the rail line plus Lily Reed Triton to make it an enchantment to enable Civilized. No, Zangy's going to lead off on Shinrei. Well, that means Purplemurasaki gets one big hit in. I guess next turn they can Verdict of the Council to exile the Gawu. Yeah, Purplemurasaki has a really good turn lined up. It does mean that Purplemurasaki won't be wasting a mana here because they play Lily Reed Triton, which they need to in order to enable Civilized. They can't play Underpass it, no. So they'll be floating a white. I still think it's better to get Civilized on Founding Hero and get a big swing in first because you're not always going to get this opportunity. Also, Underpass Sentinel doesn't actually protect Founding Hero that well because all of Zangy's removal goes through Indestructible. And, oh, actually, Hexproof, right. I guess Purplemusaki's playing out Underpass Sentinel first in order to protect the Founding Hero from something like an Iron Warden. But that means Purplemurasaki can't really swing in this turn because Shinrei will trade with it. I think Zangy's actually more than happy to trade Shinrei for Founding Hero because Founding Hero is a way bigger threat to Zangy than Shinrei is to Purplemurasaki. Oh, Monument. Yeah, that's a pretty good draw. Unfortunately, Zangy keeping a Moorland Illusionist sort of coming back to bite them because it still doesn't do anything right now. They have no cards to synergize with it. Purplemurasaki top decking Mercantile Quartz. Yeah, that's the perfect card because they can Mercantile Quartz for 2 and that basically locks out Zangy's entire deck. Or at least locks it out from card casting. They can still get creatures into play off Monument, but actually the Monument is a pretty big problem because if Purplemurasaki slams Mercantile Quartz, there's a chance they just Monuments in Anointed Cursebreaker to get rid of it. I still think Purplemurasaki should slam the Mercantile Quartz though, because that's just such a huge play. Okay, seems like Purplemurasaki is going to play out the rail line first. Then he's going to Monument now. I wonder why. I mean, okay, so they Monument in Gawu, so that prevents Founding Hero from attacking, but now Purplemurasaki has a perfect target for their Verdict of the Council. I think they probably just want to Verdict the Gawu instead of playing Mercantile Quartz this turn. No, they're still going to play Mercantile Quartz. Yeah, I guess you might as well shut down the opponent before getting rid of the thing that's stopping you from attacking. So Zangy draws Suzume. Suzume plus Moorland Illusionist allows Zangy to make copies. Unfortunately, all of Zangy's creatures right now are legendary, but that won't be very useful. And also, with Mercantile Quartz out, the fact they can only activate Monument once per turn is really going to put the squeeze on Zangy. So it seems like Zangy's fetching out their lands, not that they can really use any of them, due to Mercantile Quartz on 2. Okay, Zangy just passes, and now Purplemurasaki gets a perfect opportunity to Verdict of the Council to Gawu. Although Zangy can just Monument into Suzume and then bounce the Gawu to save it from the Verdict, but then that gives Purplemurasaki one turn to swing in with the giant Founding Hero. Zangy's going to Monument in the Suzume now. That's the wrong time to do it, I think, because, yeah, Verdict of the Council is an ETB trigger, so Zangy should have waited for Verdict to resolve and then Purplemurasaki to target Gawu with the Verdict ETB trigger before using Monument to put in Suzume, but they're going to put in Moorland Illusionist instead. Why are they not saving Gawu with the Suzume? Didn't expect Verdict to target Gawu, and they don't even sack Gawu with Shinrei. So now it's stuck under the Verdict. I mean, they should have sacked Gawu with Shinrei so that next turn maybe they attack and manage to connect with Purplemurasaki to bring Gawu back. But instead, they just let Gawu get stuck under Verdict, so I guess they're banking on running Anointed Cursebreaker, but Anointed Cursebreaker is already tasked with dealing with Mercantile Quartz, so I think it's sort of... Actually, no, if if Zangy draws a Anointed Cursebreaker, they can combine Anointed Cursebreaker with Suzume and Moorland Illusionist to get a bunch of copies and exile Purplemusaki's entire board. Okay, yeah, Zangy realizing that they misplayed really hard there. I mean, you misplayed twice. First by not waiting for a target, and second by not sacking Galwu in response to Purplemusaki choosing the targets. Purplemusaki swings in with a 5-2 Double Striker. Zangy's not realizing that this thing has Double Strike. Okay, Zangy just takes, which isn't very good for them because life is a resource that they use to use Suzume. And by going down this low, now they're limited in their Suzume activations. In Flood Depth, yeah, drawing lands here isn't very helpful, and Zangy just concedes. Zangy probably could have survived there if they played better and used Suzume to bounce Galwu in response to the ETB trigger of the enchantment, or just sacking Galwu when it got targeted. But Zangy did neither of that, so yeah, they just lose to a giant civilized founding hero. But that just shows how misplaying can lose you the game, I guess.